It seems like every time I turn on the television, there's a TV commercial with Matthew McConaughey. Now, let me be clear. I like Matthew McConaughey. I think he's a really good actor. I enjoy watching him in the movies. But lately now, all he's been doing is pitching the Lincoln Navigator.
What's wrong with that?
Now, the newest commercial has Matthew in his 2018 Lincoln Navigator, fully loaded, sitting in this car that's on a ferry. Got the picture? And the ferry is on its way to a remote island. And he is sitting there and he is thumbing through a notebook of handwritten drawings and notes. And when the ferry docks, he drives off fearlessly in the morning onto this rugged, fog-covered island. And he utters this one memorable line. Are you ready?
Ready.
Next chapter. He was probably paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to memorize that line. Now, when you're watching it, it's an emotional moment, especially if you're a Ford employee. Ford is trying to touch your heart. They are challenging your senses and challenging your sense of adventure, because the only way we're going to have that kind of an experience is to lease or buy a 2018 Lincoln Navigator. Now, as I shared with you, I watch his commercials. I don't turn them off. I don't channel surf. I watch. I like him. Good actor. Only once did I suffer a twinge of buyer's remorse with my 2018 Ford Escape, watching that. Now, I never felt like I should leave ministry or look for more adventure in my life. I never felt tempted to be less like Bill Kren and more like Matthew. I like me. I love the ministry. I strive to be the best pastor I can be. I'll never be Matthew McConaughey. And now I'm reading here in 2 Samuel chapter 5, and it's all about a young king by the name of David. And I say to myself, I would trade in my Ford for a chariot. I mean, I would rather be a leader like King David than anyone else. Let's take a look at the man, his life, part of it. I'm going to preach a sermon that's going to help me. Now, if you get some help from something I said, wonderful. This is for me. So we begin, and as we examine the qualities and the values that not only made David a great king, endeared him to his people, the first thing that stands out is his faith. Now, if you want to follow along, I do have that bulletin insert with the scripture reprinted. And we're going to read about King David's value of faith in God, what made him a great leader in the eyes of the people. It begins with verse 1 and 2. The people acknowledge this. They say, "We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, when Saul was our king, you were the only one who really led the forces of Israel. And the Lord told you, you will be the shepherd of my people, Israel. You will be Israel's leader." Now, David desired to place his total trust in God, all of his faith, all of his trust in his Creator. And because of that, he was a success. I mean, the people recognize that they have a special man here. He's shoulder and heads above everyone else. A man of faith. There's a little book I read years ago, and I kept the story. It was written by a fellow named Leslie Flynn. Now, according to Leslie, this is a true story, so bear with me while I share it. It's about a little boy in a frontier town raised by his grandmother. One night, the house catches fire. Grandmother desperately tries to save her grandson, but the flames are too much and she perishes. This little frontier town, they didn't have a fire department like us, so they had to, the bucket thing, the bucket brigade. The house is still burning, and they can hear the cries of the little boy in the upstairs bedroom, and so they're standing around wondering, what are we going to do? Suddenly a man pushes through the crowd. He climbs up an iron drainage pipe to the window, jumps in, grabs the boy, gets him on his back, and climbs back down the same way on this hot drainage pipe. Well, the crowds are cheering. He saved the boy. But now the little boy has no family. And so a few weeks later, there's a public meeting to determine the fate of the child. Whose custody is he going to be placed in? One man said, well, I'm a farmer, and I will take that boy and I will teach him how to be a good farmer so that he can make a living. Second person said, well, I'm a teacher, and I will make certain that he receives a good education. Third voice pops up. I will be able to give this boy an elegant home and first-class education. I'm the banker, and I will see to it he gets everything he needs. Well, the person in charge of the meeting looks around and he asks, is there anyone else who would like to say something? From the back row, man arose. And he said, these people are able to give him so many things that I cannot give him. But then he raised his hands, and they were scarred from the fire. And he said, I can give him my love. And the little boy saw him and rushed up and put his arms around him and hugged him. What an easy decision to make. He sacrificed so much for a child. David was a man who placed his trust in God, and he had proof that he had given more than anyone else. When it came to faith, David could hold up his hands and say, you can follow me. You can trust me. I've been tested. These are the scars that I bear. I can be a leader. And he could do this because it all started very young in life. As a teenager, moments before he went out to fight the giant Goliath, remember the story? He's just a young boy, a teenager. King Saul said to David, you can't do it. You're too young. The sword, the helmet, the armor, too big. And David's reply was, hey, don't worry about this guy. I can take him. Well, Saul wasn't convinced. So David showed him his hands. 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning with verse 34. This is David talking to Saul. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats. When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Now, you don't go into battle with this kind of faith, with this kind of confidence, without being tested, and he had scars to prove it. Listen, you don't fight a bear or a lion and not get scratched up and clawed. It doesn't say that in the Bible, but you just know David had scars. This was his proof. This was his authorization that he was a man of faith, and he loved and he trusted God. This is the kind of leadership I want to provide you. And this is the kind of leadership our church needs. For some of you in positions of importance, be men and women of faith. Let's take a look at his loyalty. What a great quality. It says, so there at Hebron, King David made a covenant before the Lord with all the elders of Israel. A covenant. A promise of loyalty. Not only did the people pledge their loyalty to this new young king, David presented to them a signed and sealed contract promising him that he would be the leader they need. And this contract came naturally to David. This was the way he did business. It reflects the quality or the character of the man. So when you study his life in the Bible, you know that before the ascension to the throne, David served King Saul, and Saul was no easy man to serve. This guy was prone to raging moments, deep depression. He was jealous of David. He was suspicious. David was his general. And he'd go out to battle and have these great victories, and Saul would hear about it, and inside he would just be boiling mad. He didn't care for David and what he was doing, and the people who admired him. How do you feel when you know somebody hates you and would love to just beat you to a pulp and talk about you behind your back? How does it make you feel? I know how it makes me feel sometimes. I want to take a baseball bat and club in the back of the head or her head. David had every reason to be disloyal to King Saul. And yet he recognized that Saul was the king. He had been handpicked by God to lead Israel. He was still king. In the first book of Samuel, chapter 24, we have recorded a meeting between Saul, who is the king who hates David, and David. And Saul's been in this demonic rage. He's out to kill David. David is running for his life. Saul is in hot pursuit with his army. One evening, Saul finds shelter in a cave, and there he's sleeping. And it just so happens, this is the same cave that David had been hiding in. This is his perfect opportunity to get rid of the enemy, to get rid of the king who hates him. But the next day, and from a safe distance, David shouts out to the king who's still in the cave. 1 Samuel 24, 9 and 10. Why do you listen to the people who say I am trying to harm you? This very day you can see with your own eyes it isn't true. For the Lord placed you at my mercy, there in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you. For I said, I will never harm the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. And now, here it is, years later, David is king, and he expects loyalty from his people, loyalty from his advisors, loyalty from government officials, because of who he is. He demonstrated loyalty to those who God had chosen to lead. A great leader is a loyal leader. Let me say that one more time. A great leader is a loyal leader. And let me tell you, in today's society, those are foreign words. It seems like no one is loyal anymore. Brand loyalty, out the window. Go to Walmart and buy a pair of jeans, made in China. Not going to support anything unless it's cheaper. It's disappearing. A loyalty. When I was growing up, the word was esprit de corps. Esprit de corps. Even in sports. Team isn't doing well, they lose their fans. Listen, I still support the Tigers. Whether they're winning or losing, I watch, I cheer, and I wear my D. You know what? It's old-fashioned today to be like that. We are so quick. It happens in the church. No loyalty anymore at the local church, with the denomination, with church leaders. People get offended and say, I'm going to leave this church and I'm going to go down the street to the other church because they're going to be nicer. And they're not. Let me in. I'm going to fill you in on something. I've been in the ministry for almost 40 years, so I can say this with a little bit of authority. Congregations are basically all the same, big or small. You have the workers, you have the supporters, people of faith and prayer, you have the grumblers, you have those who undermine everything, and they're the naysayers.
Amen.
I have to believe if I maintain a high level of quality to you, the church, even to the denomination, that God's going to honor this and bless it. It'll be a good lesson for us all. Came across this. You know what? I'm going to preach a little longer. Hey, you know, where are you going? It's Sunday. The top 10 reasons why it's time for a pastor to leave his church. Number 10.
1, they preach too long.
Number 10. You return from vacation to find the visiting preacher's name on your mailbox. Number 9. Your church is about to split and neither group wants you. Number 8. Shut-ins pull the shades and pretend they aren't home when you come to visit. Number 7. Your mom moves her membership to another church. Number 6, you're cast as the donkey in the Christmas cantata. Number 5, your wife moves her membership to another church. Number 4, your secretary starts sending out your resume. Number 3, your members start referring to you in the past tense. Number 2, the women's club gives you a 2-for-1 coupon to Ponderosa for Christmas. And the number 1 indicator, it's time to move when you show up at the church on Monday and you discover all the locks have been changed. A king's obedience. Let's take a look at that real quick. We've looked at his faith, at David's loyalty, the third quality that makes him a great leader. Oh, I pray that I have this. I've got to have this all the time. Obedience. 2 Samuel chapter 5. But after a while, the Philistines returned and again spread out across the valley of Rephaim. And again, David asked the Lord what to do. Do not attack them straight on, the Lord replied. Instead, circle around behind and attack them near the poplar trees. When you hear a sound like marching feet in the tops of the poplar trees, be on the alert. That will be the signal that the Lord is moving ahead of you to strike down the Philistine army. So David did what the Lord commanded. He struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. See that? Really simple. David did what the Lord commanded. He's about to lead an army into battle. The odds makers have determined that he doesn't have a chance. They're going to vote for the Philistines, put their money on the Philistine army. You have every reason to be concerned, every reason David has to run and hide, but he's a leader, and he obeys God. He trusts in God. He only wants to know God's commandment and do what's best for Israel. Now, keep in mind that this is a younger David. You're probably thinking, oh, wait a minute, when he got older, didn't he get in trouble with Bathsheba? Well, yeah, but this is when he was younger and closer to God, and yes, he failed miserably. He had to repent and seek forgiveness from God. But at this moment, he's a young leader and he's seeking God's will. And David did what the Lord commanded. He was told not to move until you get the signal. He obeyed the orders. He waited, and God moved, and David enjoyed a victory. What a lesson for us. Not just in obedience, but there's a formula here. Listen, this is important. There's a formula here in conquering our fears. I mean, so many times we are reluctant to move. We're afraid to act. We're afraid. God works with obedient leaders and obedient followers in spite of our fears. Remember Ann Landers? Boy, I'm dating myself. We used to buy a paper, Ann Landers, the advice column. At the height of her career popularity, she received something like, get this, 10,000 letters a week asking for advice. And the most common problem people wrote about? Fear of something. Afraid of losing their health. Afraid of losing their job. Afraid of losing their family. So many people are still afraid. And so many times, there's very little reason to be afraid. But yet, that's the world we live in. Hello, church. Afraid to try something new. Afraid to step out in faith. Afraid to make a decision. Because if we make this decision, we might offend somebody. John, my moderator, we need leaders who are bold, have a strong faith, who are not afraid. If they know they're in God's will, God's going to help them. I believe that. David is our example. Well, there it is. The qualities, the values that help us all to become successful in serving God. Faith, loyalty, obedience.